A very good evening, Zimbabwe. You are listening to our last special edition of Studio 7 Live Talk from the Voice of America on Sunday, April 3rd, 2022. And this is Chris Gande.
And I'm Jonga Kandemiri.
We would like to welcome our viewers and listeners in Zimbabwe and around the world. Tonight, we are continuing with our discussion on the by-elections that were held recently. And tonight we are also going to be looking at how the by-elections went by, how the constituencies went, how we managed to get the results. And also we are going to be talking to other people who are our guests tonight.
And there may be another round of by-elections soon in some councils, as the MDC-T, led by Mr. Douglas Mwanzora, recalled 16 more councillors, while the People's Democratic Party, or PDP, recalled Harare Ward 17 councillor and suspended Mayor Jacob Mafume.
Yes, and like I said, we are going to be joined by a number of guests, including the CCC, that is the Citizens Coalition for Change, President Nelson Chamisa, and others. John.
Yes, Chris, nasi vadiwa vateereri nevatariri tiri kusangana muchirongwa chedu chekupedzisira pachirongwa chakakosha chatanga tichitarisa nezvesarudzo dze-by-election dzakanga dzichiitwa munyika. Tapinda musvondo rechitanhatu kana kuti 6th week tichitarisa nezvekubvira tichatanga iri gadziriro kusvika dzaitwa sarudzo, uyezve takutarisa yatingati post-mortem, tichitarisawo zviri kuitika musarudzo kana gadziriro ya2023, sarudzo dzichaitwa nyika yose. Nhasi uri musi wesvondo, tiri muna kubvumbi uri musi wa3 kubvumbi 3 April 2022. Tiri kutarisa zvakabuda musarudzo idzo dzema-by-elections, zvakatambirwa sei nemapato akakwikwidza uye vakakunda kana vakakundwa. Tichitarisawo zvakare gadziriro, nekuti vazhinji vari kutoti vatotanga kutoita gadziriro yekuenda mberi vachitarisa sarudzo dza2023. Tinoona kuti panogona kuita sarudzo dzema-by-elections zvakare chero nguva, nekuti mutemo unoti kana pakanga padzingwa vanhu panofanira kuita sarudzo dzekutsiva vanhu iwawo mukati memazuva 10 kana kuti 90 days. Zvinogona kuitika izvo nokuti takaona bato re-MDC-T inotungamirwa nawaDouglas Mwanzora richidzinga mamwe makanzura zvakare matunhu masere kana kuti 8 provinces dzenyika. Vakadzinga makanzura anokwana kuita 16 vachinzi vari kudyidzana nebato re-Citizens Coalition for Change. Zvimwe chetewo zvakaitika kubato re-People's Democratic Party kana kuti PDP, takaonawo richidzinga vainge vari councillor weward 17 muHarare, Jacob Mafume, vakanga vari zvakare meya weguta reHarare, vanga vakambomiswa basa. Takazonzwa gurukota rezvekutongwa kwematunhu vaJulai Moyo vachizivisa kuti vaMafume havachisiri meya weHarare nekuti bato ravo ravadzinga. Saka zvinoreva kuti panogona zvakare kunge pachiitwa dzimwe sarudzo dzema-by-elections. Ndo zvimwe zvezvinhu zvatiri kukurukura. Nhasi tichange tiine vadare vakati wandei, asi taita rombo rakanaka rekuti tinge tichiwana kubva kune mutungamiri webato re-Citizens Coalition for Change vaNelson Chamisa, vachitipa wimbiso yekuti vachange vainesu zvakare pachirongwa chino. Chris.
Yebo Jonga, yebo Zulukandaba, siyadibana njalo kuhlelo lwethu lwe-live talk, uhlelo lokucina ngesonto. Liyakhumbula ukubana kumaviki ambalwa ayedluleyo besilo hlelo lothu lona lolu olwe-live talk lapho kade sikhuluma ke ngodaba lokhetho lwama-by-elections asedlule. Kodwa ke sizaqhubeka i-live talk ikhona ngamaviki wonke kusuka ngomvulo kufika khona ngoLwesihlanu, besila lolu uhlelo oluqhakathekileyo ebesilalo ngomgqibelo langesonto. Lamhlanje ke luhlelo lokucina olwangesonto. Lamhlanje njengoba sithembisile ke ukubana sizaba silabanxusiweyo abanengi, sikhangela ke ukuthi ukhetho lohamba njani, njalo sikhangela ukuthi ukhetho oluzayo olomnyaka ka-2023 lona luzakhangeleka njani. Kuyini okwenzakeleyo phambilini kokhetho lwama-by-elections okumele sikukhangelele kukhetho oluzayo oluka-2023? Udlakela luyabe lukhona na, njalo abantu bazabe bebaningi yini abaza kuyavota? Ngoba ukhetho lolo lwama-by-elections hayi sibona ukungani balutshwana kakhulu abantu abavotileyo njengalokhu kade kukhangelelwe. Yes, Zulukandaba, njengokulithembisa kwethu, sesilaye owethu onxusiweyo owakuqala, umnumzana Rejoice Ngwenya, yena ocubungula ezombusazwe kunye lezonotho. Good evening, Mr. Ngwenya. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be back again onto the show.
Oh, thank you so much. So, Mr. Ngwenya, the elections came and they went, and what are the most basic fundamental lessons that we can draw from these elections?
Well, look, I mean, this sounds like a very old story, an old LP that is being replayed over and over again since 2000. But first of all, we know that by-elections by nature in Zimbabwe are not popular, because there is usually a huge euphoria around the presidential election that creates a gravitas for the interest of a council and House of Assembly. So outright by-elections have always been less popular because Zimbabweans are very election weary. So it's a lesson that we've always been able to glean, that we cannot use by-election as a litmus test for the success of major presidential harmonized elections, even when it comes to other processes that are within the electoral cycle. So in principle, really, there is nothing new, but because there have been some movements around the political parties, there is likely to be some interesting points that we can glean from the past experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but Mr. Ngwenya, during the build-up to these by-elections, we saw political parties holding their campaign rallies, and venues were always full to the brim. What changed to these low turnouts on the actual day of vote?
Well, the principle is that a rally by nature is very populist, and besides, there are two sides to the coin. ZANU-PF rallies generally are by cohesion and cabal, so you cannot measure the success of a ZANU-PF rally on the basis of numbers, because we know that the numbers are backed from all over the country. But because of the change of the brand, the new brand name that Nelson Chamisa brought, the CC brand, and of course, being a young person himself, there's a tendency that there was an excitement around what is Nelson Chamisa going to offer, that which MDCT failed to offer. So the issue of novelty and the newness of CCC must have been a huge attraction. But that has nothing to do with voting or for the voters' roll. It's just an excitement around a new brand.
Mm-hmm. But Mr. Ngwenya, what do you think can be done to encourage people to go en masse and vote? Because, like you said, we have these precedents where by-elections are not popular, but we see in some countries they are very popular. What can be done in Zimbabwe to make them popular, including the general election themselves? Because we have seen the numbers are not that impressive. What is lacking, especially from the politicians themselves when they go out to campaign?
Well, look, I don't want to place the blame totally on politicians, because remember that one of the key aspects of encouraging voting is the confidence that the citizens have in the electoral processes. It's just like was in dollar. We have no confidence in local currency, so there's no appetite for it. So the hype around the misdemeanors Zimbabwe Election Commission of ZEC, the behavior of the police around the elections, and the dominance of the public media around ZANU-PF and all that. And of course, political parties themselves that keep saying, I'm talking about opposition here, gentlemen, that keep saying there's a lot of rigging, we don't trust ZANU-PF and all that. So it creates kind of an innate desire not to participate. So apathy is an aggregate, some aggregate of different facets. So to be able to encourage voters to register to vote, there must be absolute 100% confidence in the Electoral Commission. Because if there's no confidence in the Commission, people will simply say there is no point in voting because ZANU-PF will cheat and win anyway. So ZEC is at the center of the apathy of voting in Zimbabwe, and that has to be corrected before 2023.
Mm-hmm. But that blame should it not be laid squarely on opposition parties, because they complain about ZEC being biased, but are quick to welcome results when they come out in their favor?
Well, that is natural. I mean, in soccer we have something we call playing under protest, because if you know that the match commissioner and the referee and all the supporters on the ground are from one team, you obviously have to complain about it. Look, gentlemen, year after year, electoral observers in Zimbabwe, both local and international and regional, they have always said there must be electoral reform. So the lack of electoral reform means that the issue of lack of confidence in ZEC will always have to be an issue that opposition raised. You remember very well when Mahere was saying, we are going to participate to prove a point so that we have a basis for complaining. However, you make a good point that if you are a competitor and you keep complaining about the system, but you are quick to embrace the results, it shows some kind of contradiction. So if the opposition parties feel they've gone beyond the capacity to influence electoral reform, they have two choices. You either participate quietly or you don't participate and fight from outside the ballot box for your right. So that would be my opinion for the time being.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ngwenya. Please do stay on the line. We have another guest, and he is a veteran media personality. He's an editor, Mr. Barnabas Todlana. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Todlana, we have seen the playfield in the politics of Zimbabwe repeating itself time and time again. We have heard complaints from the opposition that the media, especially the private media, is on the side of the opposition, while the other side, which is the public media, seems to be with the ruling party. And what can you say about this divide?
I think it's not correct to say the private media is on the side of the ruling party. Because you see, as the media, we are just supposed to report things as they are, as they happen. And in the by-elections just gone by, we had a situation where we found that the state media was twisting facts. They attend the rally and then they pick one bite and then they twist it to suit whatever narrative that they might have. But where the private media is concerned, I did not see anywhere where we in the private media were twisting facts or twisting events or twisting numbers. No, we were just reporting things as they happened and as the speaker of whichever political party said. Whatever he said on the podium is exactly what the private media reported, which I must hasten to say was not the same case with our colleagues in the public media.
Iye watozana tokugamuchirai kuchirongwa chedu muri kutaura naJonga Kandemiri naChris Gande. Ndingati hangu ndikande mubvunzo nerurimi rweshona kuti taona sarudzo dzakapfuura dzema-by-elections zvakawanda zvakaitika tichitarisawo kudivi renhau kune vainyunyuta kumativi ose, vamwe vachiti hatisi kuwaniswa mukana kumanhepfenyuro nemapepanhau zviri pasi pehurumende, zvimwe chetewo nevebato rezanu-PF vachitiwo vemapepanhau akazvimirira kana nhepfenyuro nemasangano enhau akazvimirira vari kunyanyotarisa divi remapato anopikisa. Zvinhu zvamungataura pamafambisiro akaitwa mabasa nevenhau pasarudzo idzodzi?
Vanhu venhau ndinoona takaita basa redu nemazvo. Ndichitaura ndakatarisa kune mapepa akazvimirira. Mapepa akazvimirira vaiita basa ravo nemazvo pakuti vanotaura zvaiitika kuti mutauri ati ABCD, mutauri uyu ati ABCD. Handikwanise kutaura zvimwe chetezvo nehama dzangu dzinosenza kustate media, nekuti pane maoccasions anoita 2 kana 3 ekuti vaiatenda rally vobata 1 kapoint kavanakidza vokamonyongora kuti kapindirane nemafungiro avanawo kana kuti mafungiro avanenge vaudzwa kuti tikuda kuti zvinhu zvibude zvakadai. Vese vemapato aipikidza vaiwana mukana wekukavhiwa. Private media vaibuda marali avo taiatenda tichinyora zvinenge zvaitika. Kustate media ndo kwaizoita dambudziko, ndosaka makazoona pane pakazonzi hatichade kuti vanhu vestate media vaatende marali edu. Zvakange zvabva monyongora kunenge kwaitwa nesu vatapi venhau pane zvinenge zvataurwa kurali yacho.
Thank you so much. Mr. Twadlana, you have mentioned that there were problems with the with the government media, the public media. But we have organizations like the Voluntary Media Council, which are supposed to be monitoring such, inadequacies. What happened?
The Voluntary Media Council essentially works after a complaint is made. So if anybody is aggrieved, you have to take your complaint to the Voluntary Media Council for them to act. If you do not lay a complaint, then they are constrained in whatever they might be able to do. We also have other media organizations which one they've expected that they could have come in to say the way you the media are covering these elections leaves a lot to be desired. Can you not try to just stick to the ethics of the profession? That maybe could have come in from the Zimbabwe Union of Journalists, for example, to just remind people that first and foremost they are journalists and they are activists second, and stick to the ethos and ethics of the profession. But some of these organizations, like the one mentioned, VNCZ, they're like the police. If you don't go to the police to say he has robbed me, there's no way the police can come to arrest somebody to say you have robbed this person when no complaint has been made.
Mm-hmm. And the way journalists were treated by political parties, any complaints?
Yes, we have always raised the issue that journalists are there to do a job. If you are not happy with the way they are conducting themselves, there are avenues which you can take. Instead of one beating up a journalist, one journalist from Tales in Zimbabwe was beaten up by Triple C members in Mashingo. And the state media journalists were threatened that if they attended the Triple C rallies, they would be bad. Whether they would be beaten, that was not said, but they would be bad. So such type of behavior is not expected of political parties, because journalists are there to do a job. Whether you are happy with what they are doing or you are not happy with what they are doing, you can lodge your complaints after, but allow the journalists to do their job.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Mr. Todlana. Please do stay on the line. We have our guest who we announced earlier on, who is the president of the Citizens Coalition for Change, Mr. Chamisa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chamisa. My first question is that we saw before the elections, the by-elections, there were a number of issues that were raised by the Team Pachedu, which were pertaining to the voters' roll and all that. So, as a party, what are you doing, especially when we are looking forward to the 2023? Are you taking this to court, or you have other plans?
Well, I must say that we have already stated in very comprehensive and uncontestable terms that we need an election that is free, fair, and credible. And this election is premised on the core issues that we want to see in place. We have identified 7 critical issues that are deal breakers, and that must be part of what we have termed a pre-election, post-election pact, which is to prepare for the election in 2023. A dialoguing process and framework. Number one, we want to make sure that the right to vote is guaranteed. And on the right to vote, we have the right to vote for those who are in the diaspora vote, but also the right to vote for citizens who have just attained the age 18, who have not had access to their identity documents so that they are able to register as voters. And also registration to vote must not be cumbersome or must not be administratively restrictive for the ordinary citizen. So that's the right to vote, number one. Number two is a credible voter roll. We want a voter roll that is biometric, available to all the contesting parties and candidates. But more to that, that voter roll must also be verifiable, traceable, and credible. And, that's where you then bring the issue of Pachedu. And we've appreciated their work. We've also done a lot of work with our experts to do an audit, a forensic audit, of what's available, and we've seen that there are a lot of changes that have been effected. Some have been effected illegally without even the knowledge of those who have been affected. And it's an issue we've taken up with VEC. VEC did not provide satisfactory answer. We would have taken it to court, but of course it was a short notice. But it's something that we are still pursuing to make sure that we have recourse and we are able to resolve that issue. The third issue, which is equally important, is the issue of the security of the votes. The issue to do with the ballot papers, who prints them, where are they printed, their storage, their distribution, even their deployment. Issues to do with the authenticity of the inks, the material to be used for the polling, and also even polling officers themselves. Who are they? Are they not spokes? Are they not biased? Are they not people who work on behalf of a certain political party against another political party? We want our civil servants who are unbiased and also want people who are credible. So it's an issue that we have put on the table. Number 4 is the security of the voter. Voters must not be harassed. Voters must not be commandeered. We don't want command voting. In the rural areas, we hear that there are people who are terrorizing voters, citizens, asking them to pretend and claim that they can't read or write so that their vote is imposed. That is almost treasonous, if not criminal, because the right to vote was at the core of the liberation struggle. One man, one vote. One woman, one vote. And for anybody to take away that vote is being anti-liberation struggle, is being anti-people, is being anti-democracy, and we cannot afford to accept or appreciate this kind of behavior. So we really have to work on this in terms of the security of the voter. People must know that when they vote, there's freedom of expression, and even freedom after expression, freedom to choose, and then freedom after their choice. Mm-hmm. At the moment, that is jeopardized, particularly in the rural area. So we need the right and security of the voter, so that voters are able to express themselves without any fear of their freedom being compromised or hazard visiting them in their domestic space or in their family space or community space. So that's the fourth. The fifth issue is to do with the results management. We need real-time results management, and we are putting this on the table to say, let the results be announced, presidential, parliamentary, and local government, at the polling station, and it must be real-time, and political parties must be allowed to do part of voter tabulation, and we're able to then verify our own vote. And we are already working on that, and we want to continue to insist on this. You know that could take years, if not months, trying to verify metaphorically, because they take their time. We want the results to be announced as is happening elsewhere, in America, in Canada, here in Africa, South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, you name it. The results are announced real time. The sixth issue is the issue to do with access to the media. ZBC is a public broadcaster, not even a state broadcaster, a public broadcaster. So we have to have access, equal access, as political players, as is required by the law, so that Zimbabweans are given the right and the opportunity to also hear different political players on what they are putting on the table so that they can choose. Last but not least, and it's very, 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 very important, is also to deal with the issues to do with the transitional mechanisms. Because we have had a dictatorship in this country for a long time, we do not have clear guidelines as to what happens when there is an election in terms of the declaration of the vote, in terms of the handover, takeover. In other jurisdictions, it's so specific in time, in process, it's cast in stone, so that there is no manipulation. We still have to have conversations and discussions about that. Those are the critical reforms we would say, in broad terms, we want to see put in place, especially for 2023.
Aiwa, tinotenda vachamisa. Regai ndiise mubvunzo mururimi rwaamai rweshona. Pane vamwe vanoti zvese zvamataura zvinomwe izvi zvinyunyuto zvinofanira kutanga zvagadziriswa izvi zvaane nguva zvichiramba zvichingoitika, asi tinoona kuti vanopikisa munoramba muchingopinda musarudzo zvinhu izvo zvisina kugadziriswa. Zvii zvamungavataurira ivavo?
Aiwa, ko hamuzizivi here kuti kazhinji unogona kupinda munhandare asi uchitaura kuti mune mafeso neminzwa uchida kuti zvibviswe. Zvinogona kusabviswa nechimbi nekurumidza, asi tine simba racho. Ndosaka makaona kuti panguva ino tachinja mupaka, tachinja skaya, chidobi chachinja, tiri varidzi vendima, tiri varidzi venyaya, tisu varidzi vengoma, tisuzve varidzi vengoma. Saka tichagadzirisa nyaya iyi nekukodzera kwakanyanya kwokuti hatizopinde muchinhu chisati chagadzirwa zvatinoda patiri kuenda pamberi apa. Ndosaka manza tichitaura nyaya yekuti ngativei nenhaurirano vese vari mumatongerwo enyika vanenge varamba tinovakoka nesimba reruzhinji kuti vauye kugungano, kugumano, kuwirirano yeruzhinji kuitira kuti kukanya hurangana. Tiridze nemupimbira kagombo rimwe chete, tiri vanhu vamwe chete, hakuna anogerwa asipo. Kana tichigerana totowirirana. Vanhu vese vanofanira kutamba vese kuti vajairirane, tigadzire nyaya ende mberi. Saka vaya vanoti hazvizoiti, zvinorambwa. Nyika haisi yebato rimwe chete, nyika ndeye vana vezimbabwe. Tine kodzero sevana vezimbabwe kuramba zvimwe zvinhu, tine simba iroro. Izvozvo muchaona ndo chikamu chimwe chatichatoita chichaita kuti kana paitwa kuramba kana kuti vanhu vanenge vachiresista kana kusabvuma kuwirirana, izvo tete akuda kuona kuti zvinofamba sei, nekuti kunyanya kana mutambo uchitambwa, bhora harisi rarefree, bhora nderevaridzi vari kutamba nevatigira vacho, nokuti ndo inonzi nhandare. Yatingati anenge ari kuridza ari refree ndiye muridzi webhora. Aiwa, nyaya ichagadziriswa iyoyo.
Yes, Mr. Chamisa, we have heard you saying that the Citizens Coalition for Change is a new party and the leaders are going to be chosen by the people. When is this likely to happen? Are we going to see some kind of Congress before the elections?
Well, you see, we once beaten, twice shy. We have learned our lessons and we have learned them very well. We are not dealing with a normal environment. Our environment is associated with a lot of these shenanigans by ZANU-PF, tomfoolery, and all these schemes and tactics that they deploy against us. So we will not announce some of the things ahead of time because of security concerns, but also because of strategy. What I can tell you is that citizens are going to choose their leader. Citizens know their movement, and that time is going to come when citizens shall choose their own leaders. We're not going to impose leaders on the citizens because it's a citizen movement, a brand new movement. A bad movement we are just about 3 months old. And I can tell you that there's been a lot of confusion and people deliberately misrepresenting things, wanting to conflate the Party MDC Alliance and the Triple C. The two are distinctly different. All the leaders that are active at front row, seat or behind the scenes are all doing so as a caretaker leadership, as we usher the process back to the citizens, because we are seeing citizens first, citizens at the center, in terms of decision-making, laying the structures in place, the institutions, making sure that we articulate the core value system, and, of course, other critical policy documents. The process itself is going to be organic, grassroots-driven, driven by the citizens, and we're already embarking on that process. So that will be happening from April right up to mid-year and end of the year. But, of course, in terms of then officially launching, those who have not launched, the Triple C, we have simply introduced the Triple C for purposes of the by-elections. The launch is going to come, and it's going to be a big launch, the biggest on the African continent, if not in the world, because it's a citizen movement. The citizens are at the center and are driving. And I have heard a lot of people complain, no, so-and-so as a leader wants to come back, so if they come into the fold of the citizen movement, nobody's coming back because it's a new movement. All those who are coming into this movement are going to take the back seat, and the front row and the front seat is only going to be occupied caretaker of the citizens, including some of us who are just caretaker leaders, will have to occupy those seats at the front as a driving, pioneering leadership. We have to get the mandate from the people, the citizens of Zimbabwe.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chamisa. Thank you for joining us. But before you go, ungatshelana abalandeli bakho ngesindebele.
Yes, funa ukuthi hayi abantu bonke asibambaneni sonke sizanqoba ndawonye masingane. Funa ukuthi hayi silungise ilizwe lethu. Sifuna ukuthi hayi abakhokheli bonke bavele ama-citizens baza-electa abakhokheli bazahambisa ibandla lethu ukuthi hayi sizanqoba and izinto zizanqoba masingane.
Thank you so much. Hayi siyabonga.
Ulungile baba, you just came and ambushed me.
No,
I polish my indebele, but it is well.
It sounds great.
Silethemba ukuthi hayi izinto zizahamba.
Hayi lathi silethemba sibongile kakhulu.
Ngiyakuthanda Zimbabwe. Yes, we need to unite and work together to build a great country, and we can do it. A new great Zimbabwe is loading.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was Citizens Coalition for Change President Advocate Nelson Chamisa. Chris, I understand we are now joined by Mr. Belief Gaule, who is a ZANU-PF member. Mr. Gaule?
Yes. Hello, my brother. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Mr. Gaule, the question on top most of the minds of many people is that of Cholocho, where you come from, your district. People were not surprised as such, but, it's one of the seats that went back to ZANU-PF. What can you tell us about the seat, Cholocho, and, the politics, general politics in the country?
Right. Let me start by saying I hear that we are having the president of the CCM. That is the most important thing that I want to underline. We are Zimbabweans, and Zimbabwe is for us all, and that is the common denominator. We are Zimbabweans. And let me come out in the open and say, yes, you are talking of Cholocho. You are now singling out Cholocho to say Cholocho what happened, really, how did people vote in Cholocho? They voted for ZANU-PF. And remember, that seat was a ZANU-PF seat. It was a ZANU-PF seat, and the ZANU-PF retained its seat. So ZANU-PF, Cholocho is for ZANU-PF.
Yes, but
remember, those are the people.
Let me remind you too that in 2000 it went to MDC. It went to the opposition.
Yes, it went to MDC, but things have changed.
Okay.
Things have changed, my brother. Mm-hmm. That is why I'm saying things have changed, and people. This is the time that people realize they made a mistake voting for MDC, and that now people have realized that they must really stick to ZANU-PF. Remember, ZANU-PF and the ZAPU united, and that was the deal that was sold by the late Father Zimbabwe Joshua Nkomo and the Mugabe. And this is exactly where we are right now as a nation. Remember, the liberation. I hear one of the leaders there is talking about the liberation struggle. That is nyika ndedu vana veZimbabwe vakarwira nyika iyi. Nyika ndedu tese, which is very correct. These are the people. I remember this other song. Yokuti vana veZimbabwe chengetai runyararo, vana veZimbabwe dzokerai kumusha. Takabatana isusu eZimbabwe. Let's build our country. No one will build our country for us. No one will build our country for us. But remember, we were colonized by the whites, and these whites who colonized us, now we have taken our land, and they are bitter, and they are using some of us amongst ourselves to fight people who are bent on building our country. We want to build our country together, and that tag of saying, hey, these people who voted for certain party, these people voted, no. Let's come together, we are Zimbabweans. Zimbabwe is for us all. And ZANU-PF as a party, ZANU-PF ought to liberate us. And this is where we are right now.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gaule. Please do stay on the line. Mr. Ngwenya, are you still there?
I'm still there. I'm listening. I'm following.
Yes, I think we heard what our other guests said. May you wrap that up in 30 seconds?
Well, I mean, it's true that, of course, Cholocho, definitely the choices are very skewed in that there have always been problems of reconciliation and Kukura only. So it's also very surprising that ZANU-PF can win a seat there. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's also a surprise. And I'm also glad that, the president of CCC mentioned the importance of, people understanding that, voting for change is critical in making our country go forward, because we need to move forward by changing the old order into the new order. And, of course, the neutrality of ZEC is also a very important, gentlemen.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Mr. Ngwenya. Chris, unless you have something to ask Mr. Ngwenya, then we can say goodbye to him.
Yes, the final question, Mr. Ngwenya, is on the media. You heard there Mr. Barnabas Twadlana saying that, the media landscape was kind of... I can't really describe it, but from what he said, you can tell that there's this major divide between the private media and the public media. What's your view on the media?
True, the media is very polarized. The public media, basically, we are talking about in papers, ZBC, ZTV, and the Herald and Chronicle, Manika. They are pro-government. They are pro-ZANU-PF. They don't give themselves space to say anything positive about opposition or about civil society. Also, if you look at the independent media, of course they're going to say a lot about ZANU-PF and so on, but their news is generally skewed towards opposition, and that is sort of polarity that we say perhaps it is not very healthy in terms of promoting tolerance, because the media has got influence. So it's important to remain factual. And also, it's important for government to maintain, equity and balance in terms of their news reporting.
Thank you so much. Tinotenda zvikuru vaNgwenya, muwane zuva rakanaka. Chris, regai tinzwe kuna vatodlana mashoko enyu ekupedzisira amungasiyira vateereri pamwe nevenhau.
Mashoko angu ekupedzisira ndekuti isu sevanhu vemedia hatifanire kunge tine divi ratinorerekera. Tinotarisirwa kunzi tiripote zvinhu factually, tisina watiri kuti uyu tikuda kumunanzva, uyu tikuda kumuruma, nekuti isusu tiri mabridge sevanhu vemedia. Tiri mabridge ari pakati ari kutaura neari kuteerera. And ari kuteerera haasi munhu webato rimwe chete kwete. Munhu ari kuteerera umwe ndewebato A, umwe ndewebato B. So isu basa redu nderekuti vanhu tiudze vanhu zviri kubva kuvatungamiriri sebridge toendesa kuvanhu kuti vanhu vamake decision yavo vachiziva kuti chavari kuzovhotera for kana totaura nyaya yemaelection chavari kuzovhotera for is because leader A at ABCD, leader B at ABCD, vanhu vomeka decision yavo. Saka isusu media tinosungirwa kunzi tinge tisina divi ratakarerekera, tive tinoita a fair referee anoripota exactly zviri kubva kune maleaders.
Thank you so much, Mr. Todlana. Just before you go, I was talking to some of my media colleagues during before the elections, and they were telling me that when they were getting into these rallies, the searching was kind of obscene. What did you experience anything like that?
The searching was for everyone. Everyone was being searched the same way. So for us as media to expect that we are given a preferential treatment because we are media, and because we think that because we are media we are not supposed to go through the security checkpoints, I think that is expected far more than is expected. Because in this kind of environment that you are in, you don't know who, for example, might be carrying a grenade. It can be a media person, So everyone, the same way that my Marara is being said, is the same way that I should be saying. I should not expect to get any preferential treatment.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Todlana. Have yourself a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, ndofunga Chris tine vateereri vari parunhare. Hello.
Hello, munosimba here?
Takasimba, ndianavo?
Ndinoitwa Tsanga.
Vatsanga, muri kupi?
Ndiri muSouth Africa.
Tipei tinzwe zvamunoda kutaura pamusoro pechirongwa ichi.
Ini zvandingangoda kungotaura hangu ndezvekuti ndiri kutarisa mararamiro atiri kuita munomu. Tatongokumbira kuti pamavhotsi anoitwa zviri zvinhu zvangoitwa zviri zvinhu zvinobuda pachena pasina utsotsi kuitira kuti neso ramangwana redu ringe rakajekawo.
Asika mukoma Tsanga, chandingada kufungisai ndikawana kuyeuchidzai ndechekuti imiwo munofanira kunge muri umwe wevanhu vanofanira kunge vachiunza shanduka yamunotarisira. Makakwanisa kunge muchinyoresa here kuvhota?
Kuvhota pandakaenda muna December ndada kuti ndinosiya ndanyoresa, saka ndakasvika zvikanzi kune lockdown vanhu havakwanisi kunyoresa, saka August ndine tariso kuti ndinoenda kuti ndinonyoresa kuvhota.
Ndinotenda zvikuru mukoma Tsanga. Thank you so much.
All right, ndinotenda baba.
Okay, I think we have another caller. Hello. Okay, I think Chris kana uine zvabva kune vamwe vateereri tinzwe.
Yes, Jonga, we have a number of listeners who sent us messages. Sikale ngo Sindiso Pepe, uSindiso uthi yena hayi umsebenzeli wenzayo uyancomeka, keep up the good work. Hayi siyabonga ke Sindiso. uMandla Mlilo uthi Ngwenya hamba kachana sifuna utshintsho eZimbabwe. I don't know ukuthi lapho uphendula ngaphi kwakhona, kodwa ke hayi siyabonga ukusithumela ke lokukhuluma lathi kusikhulumisa emsakazweni wethu. uDorothy Ncube uthi yena umuntu ozavotela iZanu PF ngalesi sikhathi hayi Dorothy hayi asilivumeli ke ukuthi lithuke emoyeni lapha ngoba ukubhalileyo lapha kungani hayi asingeke sakubala emoyeni. Siyacela ke bantu nxa libhala lingathuki. Njalo silo uNdumiso Nkomazana Khumalo uthi CCC should change their way of campaigning. I was not happy in 2018. They neglected rural areas in Matabeleland North. At Nkai South, they went on last minute. They sent Professor Welshman Ncube on 28 July, while the elections were on 31st July. Uyakhala ke lapha uNdumiso uthi siyathemba ukuthi balalele umzwile kube khona ke uChamisa siyathemba ulalele uzatshintsha ke uzaguqula izenzo jonga.
Hongo wadiwa vateereri manzwa amashoko anga achiverengwa nemumwe wangu Chris Ganda anyorwa nevateereri vari kutevera chirongwa paFacebook. Vari kutaurawo kuti pana mukoma Sindiso Bebe wanga vachiti aiwa rambai muchiita basa rakanaka ramuri kuita tinotenda zvikuru. Koita mukoma Ndumiso hanzi dai bato reCCC raedza kuti ringe richishandura maitiro aro richipinda mumaruwa richinge kwezva vanhu kana kukampena kutsvaga rutsigiro nguva iripo kwete kuzotsvaga rutsigiro nguva yapera. Koita mukoma Richard Moyo ndofunga ndi mufundisi Moyo hanzi tinotenda chose vatsanga nemashoko enyu gore rinouya ndora tinoti hande itose ndofunga vanga vachipindura mashoko ataurwa nemuteereri wedu wekutanga apinda pachirongwa vaTepson Tsanga vatiwo vari kutarisira kuti muna August vachanonyoresa kuvhota. Tine vamwe vari kunyora namba vari kuti dai matifonera tinge tichipinda pachirongwa tinoedza kuti tinge tichikufonerai. Tina mukoma Washington Munemo hanzi aiwa chirongwa bo tiri kuuya kuzovhota nezvavari kuita. Regai tinzwe tinofunga tine mumwe muteereri ari pachirongwa yezvinoizvi. Alo
makadi zvenyu?
Takasimba chose. Ndiani avo?
Ndi Anofas Mabwe kuSouth Africa.
Mukoma Mabwe kuSouth Africa muri kupi?
Ndiri kunonzi kunaibom Spring.
Naibom Spring. Kwakamira sei nokuti unoona kuti mazuva apera muSouth Africa dzimwe nzvimbo mamuchita kurwiswa kwezvizvarwa zvekunze?
Mulimpopo munenge munoti garike zvamuamuwa makasiyana nekunana Joburg nekunana Durban hazi mahotspots ana xenophobia takagara hedu zviri nani.
Muri pedyo nekumusha zvakare saka zvikanetsa munongoti gumbo rimwe svetu.
Ndizvo chaizvo.
Tipei tinzwe zvamuda kutaura pamusoro pechirongwa.
Ndinotenda kuti president wangu akateerera panyaya dzamanga muchitaura dzinoenderana nekusava neground rakanyasa kuti tasa resarudzo. Chinonetsa ndechekuti rimwe bato zvarinoita manje racho ravanoti riri kutonga pane zvakawanda zvinochemwa nazvo, pane havatodi kugadzirisa wedza zvataurwa kana kuti hazvina. Zvakafanana neishu yemadzishe, zvakafanana nezvinoitwa nemasabhuku munguva yekuno, hazvini izvozvo zvinoti discourage bichana kuti zvinozobuda here. Tinoramba hedu tichishinga nekuti change zvechokwadi tiri kuida hazvinakidzi kugara kwenyika yeutorwa. Asi izvozvo president vanofanira kuti vachamisa kana vachida kuti kuzova neshanduko muZimbabwe zvinhu zvavanofanira kuti vanyasa kutarisa. Tiri kuedzawo nepatinogona napo
Alo mukoma Anofas. Alo ndofunga taita dambudziko yenhare yavo inenge yadonha nhare yamukoma Mabwe. Chris, that was one of our callers. Anofas Mabwe was calling from Limpopo in South Africa. And he was saying that I think the CCC needs to be to look seriously at issues of these voting patterns and campaigning patterns, especially in rural areas. I think that's the same thing that Ndumiso mentioned. I'm not sure whether we still have Mr. Belief Gaule online. Okay. Chris, I think we can you can continue.
Yes, Chonga, let's take a look at what transpired before and during the elections. Yes, that was what was happening, and it was just a snippet of what we should be seeing in the next few months because, Jonga, the 2023 elections are just around the corner.
Yes, and some of these political parties were using these by-elections as warm-up for the 2023 general elections. I understand we are now joined by Mufundisi Richard Moyo. How are you, Pastor Moyo?
I'm fine, and you, kunjani?
Siyapila baba uthini?
Ngikhuluma uThoma ngiyanthokozisa ishow le mnandi khulu kwamambala nawe bra Chris Gande. Ya into ngingathanda ukuyiphawula nje ngiyathokoza kakhulu ngeshow le kufanele nihlala niyenze njalo. So ya ngifuna ukuphawula ngendaba zama-election lawa asandophele awasabonile abantu bazamile ngendlela abafisa ngayo bavotile lapho bafuna ukuvotela khona mara into ngithanda ukuyinquma sibonile ezindawo eziningi sibona abantu bavota nje ngendlela ehlukahlukanayo sibona iCC yathola izikhundla ezi-19 amakhansela sabona noba Monzora naye wahluleka so ku-2023 siyathemba ukuthi izindawo lezo zibaliselwa ukurejista kuvota thatha manga zingavulwa ngendaba yokuthi ezinye izindawo eziningi khulukhulu zasemakhaya ngale azikho izindawo lezo ziyavulwa isikhathi esincane so abantu abaningi vele bayafisa ukuthi nawo bayorejista ukuthi bavote so into ingaba into ehle khulu and futhi ngithanda ukuthi kunabantu abaningi eZimbabwe singaphela amandla sisaphela tariro marikana ngwethu ngiyakwana bathamisa bashatunga kodwa abachapinda kanti ukuthi ndo future president arudwa nokawanda sorry zangu saka ndongokuthi vanhu dai vane tarisiro yakanaka gore rino 2023 vanhu ngavandorejista kuvhota kuZimbabwe takanzwa kuti zvitupa chaiswa matunhu akasiyana-siyana so zatinoziva kuti panguva zhinji dambudziko ratosangana naro kunyika yekwedu tosangana dambudziko kuti panguva yekuvhota icharangarira patakambondovhota 2018 nzvimbo yekwedu maisvika mazita kusina moenda kunzvimbo iri kure iri nhau yematriki kuti kana musina transport bhozi vamwe vaiva nemotokari dzepati yavo vaikwidza vanhu vaendesa uko kuva kuti vasina motokari vaya amuchakwanisi kupesa manotovhotera vanhu saka tiri kuva kuti gore rinotevera vanhu ngatindi tindodetsera kuvhota tasaimuona kuti vanhu vari kutambudzwa zvakadii mukati menyika dzekunze naSouth Africa vanhu vari kurwamo pachendudhula vana veZimbabwe vari kutambudzika mavanogara mwedzi wemukuku vamwe vachiswera mudzimba iri nhau yenhamo vanasikana vechidiki vachitora zvinodhaka kuda kwenhamo saka ngatindovhota gore rino ndoimba kuti ishe kudenga anotungamira hapana chinoramba kana nguva yaMwari ichinge yakwana inenge ichakwana chete regai vatara kuti kusvika Jesu achiuya tichitonga haasi mashoko akanaka iwayo ndo zvakaitaura muprofita yachiti iwe waramba uchazoona vanhu uchazoona zvichatengeswa nemari shoma shoma asi aungazvidli muprofita atira zvakaitika saka wati gore rinotevera 2023 ichava yakanaka uye futi kuna vachamisa ngavasagona kuda kubatana nevamwe vanhu vakafanana nababa vaMonzora handioni vane idea yakanaka kuti akamboona ndo vakawisa musangano semusangano akakosha rakaparara vakabuda vakundwa kumavhoti akaitwa kugweru kana kuti kwakaitwa kuconference iya vakaenda kuna maikupe vakasvika vakakunde vakabribe maikupe nhasi maikupe vakavadzinga vanhu vese mupati saka munhu wakafanana nawo haafa kuti agamuchirwe mupati chero vachamisa zvavo vanga varipo vanga vaenda dai vangadara kutora navo but tangoti pamberi nokunyoresa kuvhota vanhu veZimbabwe nokuti nhamo irikutamba vanhu veZimbabwe kunze kenyika haiiti tinopinda munzvimbo dzakawanda tinopinda mumajere tichiona vanhu veZimbabwe vakasungwa vachitambudzwa ivo vanonga vasungwa usingwa mapepa ivava panonga chidiwa mari kusvika ma3000 kuti vabudiswe nemaloya kana usina vakagara kunana New York ma3 months vakagara kunana Central Pretoria mwedzi mizhinji saka vanhu veZimbabwe gore rinotevera vachimbozamai kuenda kundovhota hama neshamwari dzindovhota nokuti nguva dzino dzinoda kutenda futi
regai tipe vamwe mukana tinotenda zvikuru. Thank you so much. Chris, I think we now have Mr. Belief Gaule back on the show.
Mnumzana Gaule.
Yebo.
Ye ngugande baba Gaule.
Yebo Gande.
Ye ungasitshela ukuthi wena ngokubona kwakho ukhetho lolu olwedluleyo lama by elections luyatshengisa yini ukuthi impumela yakhona yiyo esingayibona ngo2023?
Mana ngithi Gande ukhetho lolu lubelo ukhetho olukhululekileyo kumbe ngithi ukhetho lokuthula kodwa okube khona ivoter apathy
i-voter apathy ngathi ibe into esebenzileyo ukuthi balutshwana abantu abahambileyo kuyavota lanxa impumela ibe yikokonoko kuyikokona but abalutshwana abantu abahamba bayavota kodwa ama-results abekhona i-apathy yakhona i-affect wonke ama-parties kodwa-ke engikuthanda ukuthi ngikutsho ukuthi lapho esiyakhona abantu bazavota ku-general election ivele i-by-election vele kande abantu bezimbabwe vele kabayithathi serious lapho ukuthi hayi lokhu akuqakathekanga into abantu bayifuna yi-general election into esengayinanzelela ungakhangela vele ama-by-elections usala kusuka le-voter apathy ngawo-ke ukuphendula umbuzo wakho mana ngithi mina impumele naleyo bekhona ungakhangela i-ZANU-PF igcine ama-seats amabili ayenge-opposition ngiyazwa abantu bekhuluma besibona hayi i-opposition ama-seats amaningi lana ayengawabo ama-seats lana kodwa balahlekelwa ngama-seats amabili phambili esiyakhona kanti nxa ngikhangela umumo wethu okhona abantu lanxa siphuma phakathi komumo we-COVID lona lowo njengala lo odalwe yi-COVID khumbula i-COVID ichabalalise zonke izinto abantu bayahlupheka indaba ye-COVID siphuzimile isikhathi esiningi ema-economies asile ngendaba ye-COVID kodwa abantu balethemba bayakwazi khonokho ukuthi hayi i-ZANU-PF government ihulumende yabo ihulumende ye-ZANU-PF ikubona besima benjalo abafuna ukulahleka khona apha endleleni naleyo lanxa bebona nje izinto ezenzakalayo kwezinye indawo abantu betshisa ukuthi ngabe kuyenzakala njengakhona ukuthi abantu bebala ukuthi ngabe imathebheleni ndikukula undi lana yinto abahlala beyisebenzisa sonke isikhathi kani ayisoze itshintshe lutho yalento abahlala beyikhulume naleyo ayisoze bancedise ngitsho ngoba abantu yinto even la izolo lokhu ngesikhathi umdave sisekhona babehlala behlabela ingoma naleyo ukuthi ama-iguguraundi ukuthi ufuna ukuzondisa abantu lokwehlukanisa abantu lokudivide abantu ayisiyo nto enhle leya impumela leyigande phambili esiyakhona i-ZANU-PF izakwenza ngcono isiyaphambili ekhethweni olulandelayo.
Yes, but the final question, Mr. Gaule, there were reports of voter intimidation, vote buying, and busing in of people from other regions and so forth. What's your quick response to that? We have just 30 seconds for you to respond.
My brother Gandhi, that is the opposition is everyday song. That is their everyday song. And I don't know whether maybe the opposition parties in Africa, I don't know. But even then, this happened even in America, my brother. Remember Trump when he was beaten, he said the elections were rigged even in America. So it's their everyday song even then. But the election was peaceful. That is my brother. That is why they won even in rural constituencies like Dinga. They won because the elections were free and fair. That intimidation they're talking about, you know what? It's a shame, really. To me, some of these things, you need not to hide behind your finger even then, because some of these things are very clear. And the people, the reports are coming from the communities there to say, okay, the elections were free and fair. And even the results, after the announcement of the results, there was no violence, no nothing. But then you can hear people saying there was people were intimidated.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Gaule. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. That was Mr. Believe Gaule, and would like to thank the other guests, Jonga.
Yes, we had Mr. Barnabas Totlana, the editor of The Observer, is a media expert. We also had Citizens Coalition for Change President Mr. Nelson Chamisa, and the political analyst Rejoice Ngwenya. My name is Jonga Kandemiri Murara Shakanaka.
And I'm Chris